I want to start us off today with a little bit of a linguistic puzzle.
Oh, okay. I like these.
It's one of those things that, it seems super simple on the surface, almost trivial. But if you actually stop and think about it for a second, it reveals this huge crack in the foundation of how we live.
You've got my attention. What is it?
Okay, so think about the phrase, bad society.
Bad society. Yeah.
You can say that, right? Like he fell in with bad society. It sounds a little old-fashioned, maybe.
A bit, yeah, but it makes perfect sense. He's hanging out with the wrong people. People who are a bad influence.
Exactly. It works. Grammatically, logically, no problem. It describes a social group that's detrimental.
A functional description. Got it.
Right. But now try saying bad community.
Bad community.
See, it feels different, doesn't it? It just doesn't roll off the tongue the same way.
It really doesn't. It feels contradictory. Like you could have a poor community or a struggling one.
Or a dysfunctional community, even.
Yeah, dysfunctional works. But bad. It just sounds like nonsense.
Exactly, because I think intuitively we all feel that the second a community becomes bad, it stops being a community.
It becomes just a group of people.
Yes. And that tiny little glitch in our language, that little snag, is actually the front door to one of the most profound social theories of the last 200 years. You have just put your finger on the central tension in the work of Ferdinand and Tönnies.
That is a very, very sharp way to kick this off. And you're absolutely right. It's not just a quirk of English. That distinction is the absolute heartbeat of the book we're going to get into today.
And that is exactly where we're going. We are doing a truly deep dive, a detailed, extensive, deep exploration into a text that was published way back in 1887.
1887.
Yeah. And I swear, reading it this week, it felt like I was reading a diagnosis of my own anxiety living in a big city right now. The book is Gemeinschaft und Gesellschaft.
Which is usually translated as community and civil society.
It is. And, we should say right up front, those German words, they just carry a weight that the English doesn't quite capture, does it?
They really do. And Gemeinschaft und Gesellschaft is a classic. And I don't use that word lightly at all. Tönnies wasn't just writing a sociology textbook. He was drafting a roadmap of the modern soul.
A roadmap of the modern soul.
I like that. He diagnosed this fundamental shift in how humans relate to each other. He called it a universally endemic clash, and it's something we are still, very much grappling with.
It's basically the shift from the village to the skyscraper. But it's so much more than just geography, isn't it? It's psychological.
Oh, it's entirely psychological.
Yeah.
Tönnies argues we've moved from a world of organic, almost instinctual connection, that's the Gemeinschaft,
The community.
to a world of mechanical, artificial association. And that's the Gesellschaft. And his mission, and, our mission for this deep dive, is to really unpack the consequences of that shift.
What gets me, what I find so fascinating, is how he predicted the very specific flavor of modern loneliness. That feeling. You know it, right? You're on a crowded subway, you're surrounded by a million people, but you feel completely and utterly alone. He explained exactly why that happens almost mathematically, long before we had smartphones or, social media to blame.
He did. And the way he did it is what makes him so brilliant to read. He's a synthesizer. He takes the cold, hard, almost cynical logic of Thomas Hobbes.
The nasty, brutish, and short guy.
That's the one. He takes Hobbes' logic and he smashes it together with the warmth and nostalgia of German Romanticism.
Which sounds like trying to mix oil and water.
It absolutely is.
Oh.
But Tönnies believed that this contradiction was the only way to do a properly scientific analysis of what was happening. He wasn't just, being nostalgic and crying over lost traditions. He was trying to dissect the whole system to understand why it was changing.
So even though it feels emotional, he saw it as a science.
A rigorous scientific analysis. That was the goal.
Okay, so let's unpack this properly. We have this huge foundational text, but to really get why he wrote it, why he was so obsessed with this split, we have to look at the man himself. This wasn't just an academic exercise for him, was it?
Not in the slightest. No, it was deeply, deeply personal. To understand the book, you have to understand where Ferdinand Tönnies came from. He was born in 1855 in the marshlands of Schleswig.
Which is way up in the north of Germany, right by the Danish border. I'm picturing it as very windswept, rural, quiet.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
And the setting is everything. He grew up in this big timber manor house. And I want you to really picture this house because it's the prototype for his whole idea of Gemeinschaft.
Okay.
This wasn't some modern suburban home where every kid has their own room and a lock on the door. This was a classic, sprawling farmhouse where the building itself told the story of the family.
So who was living there? Was it just his immediate family?
It was everyone. You had the parents, all the children, the servants, the farmhands, and even the animals. They were all living under one single continuous roof structure.
Wow. That sounds incredibly chaotic to my 21st century ears, and probably a little smelly.
It sounds chaotic, I know, but for Tönnies, it was organic. It was a single living unit. The house wasn't designed by some architect in an office. It was rebuilt and added to, piecemeal, over generations. It grew as the family grew.
So you're not just an individual living in a box. You are a literal functioning part of this larger organism.
Precisely. Your identity is tied to the house, to the land. But here's the thing. He didn't stay on the farm. His father was actually a pretty wealthy cattle breeder and banker, so they had means. And Tönnies was a brilliant student.
No, he leaves.
He leaves the marshlands and he goes right into the heart of the beast. He goes to study in the metropolitan mass culture of Berlin and Kiel.
That must have been a massive culture shock.
A profound one. Think about it. He goes from a world where everyone knows everyone's grandfather to a world of total strangers, industrial smoke, and just this rapid-fire commerce everywhere. And this experience, it created a huge split in his own personality.
He talks about that internal conflict himself, doesn't he?
He does. He felt torn. On the one hand, he was what he called a universalist and an arch-rationalist. He loved science. He was obsessed with physics, with geometry. He wanted to understand the world with cold, hard precision. That's the side of him that absolutely loved Thomas Hobbes.
Right. Hobbes is kind of the ghost at the feast in this book, isn't he? He's the eminence grise lurking in the background.
He's everywhere.
Yeah.
Tönnies spent years studying Hobbes. He admired Hobbes's cold geometrical logic, this idea that you can break human behavior down into particles and forces, just like physics. But, and this is the huge but, he hated Hobbes's conclusions. He just could not accept that human beings are naturally solitary, selfish wolves just fighting for their own survival.
Because he remembered the timber house. He knew people weren't like that.
Exactly. He had what he called the homespun perspective of the provincial backwoodsman. He knew in his bones that people also act out of love and habit and duty, not just cold calculation. So Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft is really his grand attempt to reconcile his brain, which loved the modern science of Hobbes, with his heart, which was mourning the loss of that traditional world.
That's a great way to put it. It's like he's trying to use the enemy's tools to explain why the enemy is winning.
That is a brilliant way to put it, yes. He's using the scalpel of rational analysis to perform an autopsy on the organic world.
And what about Marx? He was writing around the same time.
He had a complex relationship with Marx, too. He agreed with a lot of Marx's economic history that, the economy is the engine driving these changes. But he didn't buy the whole inevitable revolution part. Tönnies was, I think, much more of a pessimist than Marx was.
Okay, so let's get into the definitions. This is the real core of our deep dive, these two huge German words, Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. Let's start with the warm, fuzzy one. What exactly is Gemeinschaft?
So Gemeinschaft gets translated as community. But for Tönnies, it means something very, very specific. He defines it as an organic and living union of people. It's based on what he calls the unity of human wills.
A unity of human wills. That sounds almost spiritual.
It is deeply spiritual, but it's also biological. Think back to that puzzle you started with. Bad community makes no sense because Gemeinschaft implies a bond that exists before conscious choice. You don't join a Gemeinschaft like you join a gym.
Right. You're born into it or you grow into it over a long time.
You're a part of it. And he points to language. We talk about a domestic community. We don't say domestic society.
Okay, and here's the key characteristic he hammers home, right? In a Gemeinschaft, people stay united in spite of everything that could separate them.
Yes. That's the crucial formula.
Can you give us an example of that?
The easiest one is a family argument. You might have a terrible fight. You might scream at your brother. You might not speak for a week. But he's still your brother.
The bond is still there underneath it all.
The bond of blood, in this case, overrides the temporary conflict. You are united, in essence, even if you're fighting on the surface.
That makes perfect sense. And he breaks this down into 3 pillars, doesn't he?
He does. The 3 types of Gemeinschaft are based on blood, place, and spirit.
So blood is the obvious one. That's kinship, family.
Right. The most primal, instinctual form. The bond between a mother and child is his ultimate example. Then you have place. That's the neighborhood.
So just living near each other.
Living near each other, working the same land, dealing with the same floods or droughts. It creates a powerful bond of shared habit and shared struggle. You become connected to the place and through the place to each other.
Okay, blood and place. What about spirit?
Spirit is friendship or shared worship. It's when people start to think in the same way because they share a deep history and the same core values. It's a mental proximity that's just as strong as physical proximity.
Tönnies also brings in a great economic metaphor for this. He talks about the house.
The economy. This is so important. In the Gemeinschaft, in the house, production is for use, not for gain.
What's the difference?
That's a massive difference. If I bake bread in a Gemeinschaft, I'm baking it so my family can eat it. The value is in the act of feeding them, in the care.
Not in the price tag.
Exactly. I'm not baking it to sell to a stranger for a profit. The value is inherent in the thing itself and its use.
But this world, it's not some open-armed utopia. It's very exclusive.
Oh, absolutely. And Tönnies is crystal clear on this. Gemeinschaft is warm and loving for the insiders, but it is strictly, necessarily exclusive. It has to be. It relies on the distinction between us and them.
You can't have that level of deep, unconditional trust with the entire human race.
It's impossible. It requires boundaries.
Okay, so that's the timber house. That's the village. That's the warm, organic world Tönnies sees slipping away. Now let's get on the train and go to the city. Let's talk about Gesellschaft.
Civil society.
Right. And if Gemeinschaft is organic and living...
Then Gesellschaft is mechanical and artificial. He calls it an aggregate.
An aggregate. That's such a cold word. It's like a pile of gravel versus a living tree.
That's the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
A pile of gravel is just a bunch of rocks touching each other. They're not connected in any meaningful way. In Gesellschaft, you have a mass of isolated individuals who live next to each other, but they're essentially separate.
And he has that devastating line that's the perfect inverse of the community definition.
I know the one you mean.
Yeah.
In Gesellschaft, people are essentially separated in spite of all the things that unite them.
It's the perfect mirror image. It's so chilling.
It is. In a city, you might live in the same apartment building, ride the same train, shop at the same grocery store. You are physically united in 1,000 ways. But psychologically,
Old worlds apart.
you're living in what he calls a foreign land, even in your own home.
And the driving force here isn't unity, it's tension.
Yes. In Gesellschaft, everyone is, and this is a direct quote, out for himself alone. Everyone is in a constant state of tension against everyone else. It is a polite war.
A polite war. God, that's an image that stays with you. And the main weapon in this polite war is exchange.
Correct. In the community, things are shared. They're given based on need or love. In society, nothing is given freely. Everything is a trade-off. A only exists to be exchanged for B.
Even a smile can be a transaction.
Absolutely. I give you politeness in order to receive efficient service. It's a calculated exchange, not a genuine expression of warmth.
And this is the world of the public sphere, of commerce.
It's the world of the third estate, the bourgeoisie, the middle class, and Tönnies identifies one figure as the agent of this change, the person who makes it all happen.
the merchant.
The merchant. The merchant is the one who turns relationships into commodities. When the merchant comes to the village, he looks at that loaf of bread you baked for your family.
And he doesn't see sustenance.
He sees a unit of value. He sees an item to be sold for a profit. He introduces the logic of the market into the logic of the home. And once that logic takes root, Tönnies argues, civilization begins its inexorable slide from Gemeinschaft to Gesellschaft.
He also frames this in big historical terms, right? He talks about moving from communism to socialism, but he's using those words in a really specific 19th century way.
Very specific, and it's important not to get confused. When Tönnies says communism, he just means the communal life of the village, the shared property of the timber house.
And socialism.
For him, that means the socialized or societal mass culture of the city, a world governed by public interaction and contracts. It's not about state ownership of industry for him. It's about the transition from a shared life to a shared market.
You mentioning the market logic is a perfect bridge, actually, because Tönnies doesn't just stop there. He doesn't just describe these two worlds from the outside. He pops the hood and looks at the engine. He gets into the psychology.
And this is book 2 of his work. And honestly, this is where his real genius shines. He says you can't understand the society without understanding the minds that create it. And he argues there are 2 fundamental types of human will.
Wesenwill and Kurwill.
I love German for these words. Wiesenwille is usually translated as natural will or essential will.
And Kurwill.
That's rational will or sometimes arbitrary will.
Okay, let's break down natural will, Wiesenwill first. This is the will of the community, of Gemeinschaft.
That's right. Wiesenville is organic. It comes from deep within. It's rooted in the body, in your ancestors, in the past. He says it's spontaneous and unreflecting.
Unreflecting. Does that mean it's, like, dumb or primitive?
Not at all. That's a common misunderstanding. Think of a master musician playing the piano. When they're really in the flow, they're not calculating which finger goes where.
They're just playing.
They're just playing. The music flows out of them. The action comes naturally from their very being. That is Wiesenville.
It's instinct, then.
It's more than that. He breaks it down into the 3 parts: pleasure, habit, and memory. Habit is the sort of animal base. We do things because we're used to them. Memory is the voice of reason within the community. It's the conscience. It's doing what your grandfather did because it feels right and true.
He has this incredible phrase for it, the unity of means and ends.
That is the core technical definition. In natural will, the work is the reward. The fruit hangs on the tree. If you are a mother caring for her child, the act of caring is the point.
You're not doing it to get a future return on your investment?
Exactly. You're not caring for the child in order to get something else. The means and the end are completely fused. It's creative, it's artistic. You plant the garden because you love the act of gardening, not just to sell the tomatoes.
And he links this to certain archetypes. He says it's the will of women, children, artists.
He does, and we have to read that in its 19th century context, of course. But his point is that these groups, in his view, were less corrupted by the cold logic of the market. They operated more from emotion, intuition, organic connection. The common people, the peasants, also fit here.
Okay, so that's the warm, spontaneous, natural will. Now let's look at its cold, calculating antagonist, will, rational will.
Will is the product of pure thought. It's completely artificial.
Oh.
And where natural will is rooted in the past, in tradition, rational will is entirely future-oriented.
Because it's all about calculation. If I do this, then I will get that.
Exactly. It fundamentally separates the means from the ends. This is the birth of the rational actor from economics. I will do task X, which I might hate, strictly because I calculate it is the most efficient path to getting reward Y.
This is literally working a job you hate just to get the paycheck at the end of the month.
The perfect modern example. In Wiesenville, the work is your life. In will, the work is just a means to an end you pursue in your free time. Tönnies calls it arbitrary will, because your choice of action doesn't spring from your nature. It springs from a cold calculation of what is most profitable.
And this leads to my absolute favorite image in the entire book, the mask.
It's a haunting image, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tönnies says that in Gesellschaft, the individual becomes a person. And he points out that in Latin, the word persona literally means mask.
The mask worn by actors in a play.
Precisely. So to survive in the market of Gesellschaft, you can't show your true, organic, vulnerable self, your ways and will. That would be inefficient. It would be, well, it'd be bad for business.
So you hold up a mask.
You hold up a mask. You become a manager, an owner, a cashier, a contractor. These are roles we play. We separate our true selves from our public actions to function in the market.
That explains that feeling of dissonance so many of us feel, that sense of, I'm not really being myself right now.
That is the psychological friction of will. And here's the kicker. Tönnies argues that this rational will, which we think of as freedom, is actually a denial of true freedom.
Wait, how does that work? I would think that being a rational actor who can choose whatever they want is the definition of freedom.
Tönnies flips that completely on its head. He says that when you act out of rational will, you are enslaving yourself to a future goal. You're forcing your present self to do things it doesn't naturally want to do, all for the sake of some future reward.
Whereas natural will
is the pure expression of your true nature. When you act from ways and will, you are doing what you are. To him, that is real freedom. Not the freedom to choose, but the freedom to be.
That is a heavy, heavy concept. It's like, are you free because you can choose between 50 brands of cereal at the store, or are you free because you are living a life that is in accordance with your deepest nature?
That's the question he puts on the table. And of course, he associates this rational will with men, the elderly, scientists, and above all,
the merchant.
Always the merchant. Because the merchant is the master of abstraction. He deals in money, which is the ultimate abstract commodity. It has no value in itself. It is only ever a means to an end.
Okay, so we have these two psychologies. One is organic, rooted, unified. The other is artificial, calculating, and masked. What happens when you try to build a legal system, a government, on top of that second one?
Well, then you get the modern state. And this is where Tönnies' analysis gets really political. He traces how the very concept of law changes.
He talks about community law versus society law.
Right. Community law is based on understanding, verstandnis, and concord concordia. It's flexible. It's personal. If two farmers in a village have a dispute over a fence.
It's not lawyers and contracts.
No. The village elders get together, and they settle it based on wisdom, on tradition, on what's best for the long-term harmony of the village. It's basically family law applied to the whole community. The paterfamilias, the father figure, decides.
But the law of the Gesellschaft
Is based on one thing and one thing only, the contract.
the cold, hard written document.
Exactly. In a society of isolated strangers who don't trust each other, the only thing that can bind them is a written promise. I promise to pay you X if you perform service Y. The law doesn't care who you are or what your history is. It only cares if the contract was fulfilled.
And who makes sure the contract is fulfilled?
The state. And this is Tönnies' big critique. He sees the modern state in Gesellschaft as an artificial person that was created for one main purpose, to police the market.
So in the beginning, the state is just a security guard for the merchants.
That's how it starts, yes. But it becomes a kind of Frankenstein's monster. Tönnies points out this incredible paradox. The state starts as a tool for merchants to enforce their private contracts. But over time, the state becomes so powerful that it swallows society whole.
What do you mean? It swallows.
It becomes the only source of law. What the state says is law is law. This is called legal positivism. There is no higher authority, no God, no tradition, just the state.
And that's dangerous because
Because it destroys all the organic buffers that used to protect people. In the old Gemeinschaft, you had the church, the guild, the extended family, the village council. These were all layers of authority and community that stood between the individual and total power.
the modern state sweeps all that away.
It clears the field. It wants a direct, unmediated relationship with each individual.
So you're left with just the naked individual standing all alone, facing the immense power of the state.
Exactly. And you're naked because you've lost the protective clothing of your community. You're no longer a son of the village. You're just a voting unit or a tax-paying unit, an abstract citizen.
And Tönnies connects this to the physical world, too. We started with the timber house as the image of Gemeinschaft. What's the physical manifestation of Gesellschaft?
The Metropolis, the big city. For Tönnies, the city is the perfect archetype of this new mechanical society. It's the machine made real.
And he does not paint a pretty picture of city life.
No, he really doesn't. He describes it as a place of mass dissemination and rapid exchange. But the emotional description is what really hits you. He calls the city a place of veiled hatred.
Veiled hatred. I actually wrote that down because it stopped me in my tracks.
It's an incredibly provocative phrase. His argument is that because everyone in the city is fundamentally a competitor, you're all strangers vying for jobs, apartments, resources. The natural state is one of low-grade hostility.
But we can't just be fighting all the time.
No, because then the market couldn't function.
What?
So we cover up that baseline hostility with a thin veil.
And that veil is politeness, good manners.
Exactly. Politeness, convention. In the Gemeinschaft, you're kind to your neighbor because you genuinely care about them. In the Gesellschaft, you're polite to the person next to you on the train because you're afraid of the police or because you just want to smooth over the transaction of sharing space without conflict.
So peace in the city isn't real harmony, it's just a truce.
It is a truce maintained by fear and convenience.
That is so grim. But it also feels so true. You know, you walk down a crowded street and the number one rule is don't make eye contact. You maintain this little bubble of what sociologists call civil inattention.
That bubble is the veil. And Tönnies' point is that living your entire life behind that veil, constantly wearing that mask, is psychologically exhausting. It is the root cause of that modern alienation we talked about at the very beginning.
So where does this all lead? He's writing this in 1887. Does he just think we're doomed to become colder and more isolated until society just freezes over?
Well, he's definitely not an optimist. But he is a historian. And he sees this as a cycle. He suggests that this has all happened before.
The Roman Empire.
Yes, he draws a direct parallel to Rome. Rome started as a Gemeinschaft, a tight-knit agricultural community built on kinship and land. It grew into a massive, legalistic, contract-based empire, a global Gesellschaft.
And then it collapsed.
And then it collapsed. His theory is that Gesellschaft eventually wears itself out, It consumes the social capital, the trust, a tradition that the Gemeinschaft created. You can't run a civilization on pure cold calculation forever.
You create a moral vacuum.
Precisely. In the Gemeinschaft, morality comes from custom and religion. It's conscience. It's internal. In the Gesellschaft, that's replaced by public opinion.
Public opinion, that sounds incredibly 21st century. It's Twitter mobs and trending topics.
It is eerily prescient. Tönnies saw public opinion as the new, secular religion of the modern city. But unlike traditional religion, which is rooted in centuries of slow-moving tradition, public opinion is fickle. It's scientific, it's rational, but it's unstable.
It changes with the news cycle.
Exactly. It's irreligious, as he puts it. It can't provide a solid moral foundation for a civilization to stand on.
So does the book just end on that depressing note? Is there any way out?
Not exactly. There is a glimmer of what you might call hope. It's especially in the later editions of the book. He added an appendix in 1912, and he started looking for what he called antipodean hope.
Hope from the opposite pole.
Exactly. He found it in the cooperative movement.
Like food co-ops and credit unions.
Yes, the guilds, the unions, consumer and producer cooperatives. He was fascinated by the idea that even inside the cold iron shell of Gesellschaft, people were spontaneously trying to recreate little pockets of Gemeinschaft.
They were forming these corporations, not in the business sense, but in the old sense of a body of people to protect themselves.
Trying to build a little village inside the factory. Industrial democracy. He hoped that these co-ops could bring back the morality of the house. Production for use, mutual support, but do it within the context of a modern industrial society.
So the big question he leaves us with is, can we have the freedom of the city, the freedom to escape our stifling village and invent ourselves, but somehow keep the warmth and meaning of the village?
That is the ultimate tension of his entire work, and I think of modern life. The rational will, the Will, gives us incredible freedom. It lets us leave the farm, become scientists, build global networks. But the natural will, the Wesenwille, is what gives us meaning and connection. Tönnies knows we can't go back to the Middle Ages. He's not arguing for that.
But he's warning us.
He is warning us that if we let the rational will completely extinguish the natural will, we will end up in a civilization that is technologically brilliant but spiritually dead.
So to bring it all home, what does this all mean for us right now? We've gone on this journey from a timber house in the German rushes to the abstract machinery of the global market.
Well, I think the big so what here is that Tönnies gives us the vocabulary to understand our own unease. We live in an age of hyperconnectivity. We are more connected than any humans in history.
But Tönnies would look at our social media feeds and say, that's just hyper-Gesellschaft.
Precisely. It's a vast network of mechanical connections, not organic bonds. His work explains perfectly why you can have 5,000 friends on Facebook and still feel desperately lonely.
Because community isn't just a buzzword for a group of people with the same hobby.
No. It's a very specific and very fragile type of psychological bond. It requires time and shared physical space and shared struggle to build. You can't hack it. You can't download it.
And you definitely can't just sign a contract to get it.
Never. It has to grow.
I want to leave our listener with that one provocative thought from Tönnies that we kept coming back to. That idea that in our modern society, polite social interaction is just a veil over hidden hostility.
It forces you to look at your everyday interactions in a completely new light, doesn't it? When you buy your coffee, when you nod at a coworker, when you like a post online, Tönnies is in the back of your head asking, are you actually connecting? Or are you just engaging in a peaceful war?
A peaceful war. That is something I am definitely going to be thinking about on my commute home today.
Me too.
Thank you for joining us on this very deep dive into Ferdinand Tönnies.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And to you, our listener, thanks for being part of this. Well, for today, let's call it a community. We'll see you next time.